Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was louder than the thunder rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite. It was a sharp, final sound, the sound of a life being signed away. "Done," Elias said, his voice trembling slightly as he slid the contract across the obsidian desk. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. He just stared at the heavy crystal tumbler of whiskey in his hand, the amber liquid shaking with his nerves. "It's done. The debt is cleared, right? We're square." I sat frozen on the velvet settee, the fabric scratching against my palms. My head was throbbing, a dull, rhythmic ache that had been my constant companion since the accident 3 months ago. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia. Elias called it a burden. I looked for my boyfriend, the man who had held my hand in the hospital, the man who told me we were soulmates, to the man sitting behind the desk. Cash in vain. The name alone was enough to make the blood run cold in the veins of the city's elite. He was a shadow emperor, a man who owned half the skyline and the secrets of the people who lived in it. He sat in a high-backed leather chair that looked more like a throne, his face partially obscured by the shadows of the dimly lit room. He was terrifyingly beautiful, in the way a storm or a predatory animal is beautiful. Sharp jawline, raven black hair swept back from a forehead that housed eyes like shattered ice, and a tailored suit that cost more than the apartment Elias and I shared. Cashin didn't look at the contract. His gaze was fixed solely on me. It was a heavy, physical weight, suffocating and intense. "The debt is cleared," Cashin said. His voice was a low baritone that vibrated through the floorboards, dark and rich like melted chocolate spiked with poison. He finally shifted his gaze to Elias, his lip curling in undisguised disgust. "You sold him. For a gambling debt. 3 years of relationship, traded for a signature. He doesn't remember anyway." Elias snapped, his defensiveness shrill in the expansive room. He stood up, avoiding my eyes. "He's a blank slate. He doesn't remember the fights, the love, any of it. It's better this way. You always wanted him, Cashin. Everyone knew it. Well, now he's your problem." The air left my lungs. I tried to stand, but my legs felt like lead. "Elias," I whispered, my voice cracking. "What are you talking about? We're going home, right?" Elias flinched. He grabbed his coat, rushing toward the private elevator. "I'm sorry, Julian. I really am. But I can't. I can't afford you anymore." And he can. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off my lifeline. The silence that followed was deafening. I was alone with the wolf. I turned slowly to face Cashin. I expected him to be gloating, or perhaps leering. I expected the monster Elias had warned me about during my recovery, the ruthless business rival who would eat me alive. Instead, Cashin stood up slowly. He walked around the desk, his movements fluid and graceful. He stopped 3 feet away from me, respecting a boundary I hadn't even set. When he looked down at me, the ice in his eyes had melted into something agonizingly complex. Pain, longing, and a rage so suppressed it made the air around him hum. "Did he hurt you?" Cashin asked quietly. I blinked, confused. "What?" "Elias," Cashin clarified, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, as if he was restraining himself from reaching out. "Did he hurt you when he brought you here?" "No," I stammered, clutching my knees. He said we were meeting an old friend." Cashin let out a short, bitter laugh. "A friend? Is that what he told you I was? Aren't you?" Cashin took a step closer, and the scent of him hit me, sandalwood, rain, and something uniquely masculine that triggered a sharp spike of pain behind my eyes. A memory, trying to claw its way to the surface, but failing. "I have been many things to you, Julian," Cashin said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But I have never been just a friend." The first week in Cashin's penthouse was a study in gilded isolation. The place was a fortress of glass and steel, floating above the city lights. It was beautiful, cold, and impersonal, except for the guest wing he had assigned to me. Unlike the rest of the stark, modern house, my room was warm. It was filled with soft cream throws, books on architectural history, and a vintage record player with a stack of jazz vinyls. It felt like a museum exhibit of a person I used to be. I spent my days wandering the halls, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Elias had sold me. The concept was medieval, barbaric. I was waiting for Cashin to demand payment. I was waiting for him to force me into his bed, to use me as the object I had evidently become. But he didn't. In fact, he barely touched me. He treated me like I was made of sponge sugar that might shatter if he breathed too hard. We ate dinner together every night at a long mahogany table. The conversations were stilted at first, filled with my suspicion and his carefully measured patience. "You're not eating the shrimp," Cashin noted one evening, gesturing to my plate with his wine glass. I don't think I like seafood," I said hesitantly. "I feel like I might get sick." "You're allergic to shellfish," Cashin said simply. He signaled the staff with a subtle wave of his hand. "Take it away. Bring him the roasted chicken. No garlic." I stared at him. "How do you know that?" Cashin swirled the red wine in his glass, staring into the vortex of liquid. "I know that you're allergic to shellfish. I know that you hate the texture of velvet, but wear it because you think it looks sophisticated. I know that you hum when you're anxious, specifically Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major." I stopped humming. I hadn't even realized I was doing it. "Elias didn't know about the allergy," I whispered. "He tried to take me to a sushi bar last week. I had to tell him no." Cashin's glass shattered. It happened so fast I jumped. The stem of the crystal glass had snapped in his grip. Red wine, blood red, spilled over his pale fingers and onto the white tablecloth. "Cashin," I gasped, instinctively reaching out. I grabbed a napkin and moved toward him, forgetting my fear in the face of his injury. "Don't," he commanded, pulling his hand back. But his voice wasn't angry, it was panicked. "Don't touch me, Julian." I froze. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing," he rasped, standing up abruptly. He turned his back to me, his shoulders heaving. "Elias didn't know because Elias never looked at you. He only looked at the reflection of himself in your eyes." "And you?" I challenged, emboldened by the adrenaline. "You look at me plenty. What do you see?" Cashin turned back. The intensity of his gaze pinned me to the floor. "I see the only thing I have ever wanted, and the only thing I can never have. I'm right here," I said, confusion warring with a strange, magnetic pull in my chest. "You bought me. I'm yours, aren't I?" Cashin closed the distance between us in 2 strides. He loomed over me, his hand raised as if to cup my cheek, but he stopped millimeters from my skin. I could feel the heat of his palm, trembling. "I did not buy you to own you, Julian," he hissed, his eyes burning with a ferocious intensity. "I bought you to get you away from him before he killed you." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It was an accident. The car crash." "Was it?" Cashin challenged. "You were driving. That's what the police report said. But you hate driving. You haven't sat behind the wheel of a car since you were 19. Why were you driving Elias's sports car in the rain on a winding cliff road?" My head throbbed violently. A flash of light. Screeching tires. A hand shoving the steering wheel. "Stop it." I grabbed my head, stumbling back. "I don't remember." "I know," Cashin said, his voice softening instantly. He stepped back, giving me space, though his eyes remained vigilant. "I know you don't, and I won't force you. But you need to know that you are not a prisoner here. The door is unlocked. You can leave whenever you want. I paid your debt so you would be free, not so you would be mine." He turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving me standing in the wreckage of the broken glass and spilled wine, my heart pounding a rhythm I didn't understand. Weeks turned into a month. I didn't leave, partly because I had nowhere to go. My bank accounts had been drained by Elias before the sale, but mostly because the penthouse was beginning to feel less like a cage and more like a sanctuary. And Cashin was a puzzle I was desperate to solve. He was a man of contradictions. Ideally, he was the ruthless CEO of Vane Enterprises, destroying companies with a signature. But in the evenings, he sat in the library, reading poetry while I sketched. I had discovered I could draw. I didn't remember learning, but my hands knew the shapes. I found myself sketching a face over and over again. Sharp angles, intense eyes, a mouth that rarely smiled but looked soft enough to kiss. I was sketching Cashin. One rainy Tuesday, I found him in the music room. He was sitting at the grand piano, playing a melody that sounded hauntingly familiar. It was melancholic, full of longing. I walked in, drawn by the sound. He stopped when he saw me, his hands hovering over the ivory keys. "Don't stop," I said, sitting on the bench next to the window. "It's beautiful." "What is it?" Something I wrote, he said, his voice low. A long time ago. For someone who couldn't hear it. Who was he? I asked, feeling a strange pang of jealousy. Cashin looked at me, his eyes dark. He was my best friend. We met in university. He was bright, chaotic, full of light. I was this. Dark. Brooding. Everyone was afraid of me, except him. He used to drag me to parties I hated, force me to eat street food, sit with me in the library while I studied. He sounds nice, I murmured. He was everything, Cashin corrected. I loved him from the moment I saw him. But I was a coward. I was the heir to a criminal empire, trying to go legitimate. I thought I was too dangerous for him. I thought he deserved someone normal. Someone safe. He played a discordant chord, harsh and jarring. So I introduced him to someone else, Cashin said, his jaw tightening. A man I thought was safe. Elias. My heart stopped. The room spun. Me. I breathed. You're talking about me. Cashin didn't look away. You and I were inseparable for 4 years, Julian. You don't remember, but you were the one who tied my tie before my first board meeting. You were the one who held me when my father died. And I was the fool who handed you to Elias because I thought I wasn't good enough. The headache surged, blinding and white-hot. Images flashed through my mind, rapid fire and visceral. Asterisk a library. Rain against the window. A younger Cashin laughing, actually laughing, as I threw a piece of popcorn at him. Asterisk a graduation ceremony. Cashin adjusting my cap, his fingers lingering on my cheek. Asterisk a bar. Me, drunk and leaning on his shoulder. Why don't you ever date anyone, Cass? I had asked. Because no one measures up to you, he had replied. Asterisk I gasped, clutching the side of the piano. I remember, the popcorn. The library. Cashin stood up so fast the piano bench scraped against the floor. He was beside me in an instant, kneeling on the floor, his hands hovering around me. Julian? Breathe. Look at me. You gave me away. I accused, tears streaming down my face. Not just now. You gave me away then. Why? Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to be happy. Cashin roared, the control finally snapping. Elias was charming. He was safe. He didn't have enemies trying to bomb his car. He didn't have a legacy of blood. I thought I was protecting you. You broke my heart. I screamed back, the emotions surging from a place deep in my subconscious. I didn't want safe. I wanted you. I waited for you to say something, anything. And when you introduced me to him, I thought you didn't want me. Cashin looked shattered. The mighty king of the underworld, brought to his knees by the truth. I have wanted you every second of every day for 7 years. He reached out, finally bridging the gap. His hands cupped my face, his thumbs wiping away the tears. His touch was electric, familiar. It felt like coming home. I tried to stay away, he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. But then Elias started changing. He started gambling. He became aggressive. I had him watched. When I found out about the debt, about the accident, I couldn't stay away anymore. The accident, I murmured. Tell me. He was drunk, Cashin said, his voice turning into a growl. He was driving. He lost control. He dragged you out of the driver's seat and put you in it while you were unconscious so he wouldn't get a DUI. He let you take the fall. He let you lose your memory, and then he crafted a new reality where he was the victim and you were the burden. The truth was a physical blow. But strangely, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Because the fog was lifting. The feeling of wrongness that had plagued me for months was gone. Elias wasn't my soulmate. He was a parasite. The man in front of me, the man with the terrified eyes and the gentle hands, was the missing piece. Cashin, I whispered. He looked at me, hope warring with fear. Yes. I didn't answer with words. I leaned forward and pressed my lips to his. It wasn't a tentative first kiss. It was a collision. It was 7 years of silence breaking at once. Cashin froze for a millisecond, and then he made a sound low in his throat, a sound of pure desperation. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me off the bench and onto the floor, holding me so tight it hurt. He kissed me like I was air and he was drowning. He tasted of whiskey and sorrow and fierce, overwhelming love. The peace didn't last. It never does in stories like ours. 2 days later, the elevator chimed. I was in the living room, sketching Cashin who was working on his laptop. The doors opened, and Elias stepped out. He looked disheveled, frantic, and he wasn't alone. Two large men in cheap suits stood behind him. "I want him back," Elias announced, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. Cashin didn't even look up from his screen. "You're trespassing, Elias. The security code was changed." "How did you get up here?" "I still have friends in the building," Elias sneered. He looked at me, putting on a pitiful expression. "Julian, baby, come on. This was all a mistake. I won the money back. I can pay him off. We can go home." I stood up, placing the sketchbook down. I looked at the man I had lived with for 3 years. I saw the sweat on his brow, the shifting eyes, the desperation. I remembered the cold hospital room where he told me I ruined his car. "I am home," I said, my voice steady. Elias's face twisted. "Don't be stupid. You think he loves you? He's a monster, Julian. He buys people. He's a criminal. He bought me to save me from you," I retorted. Elias signaled to the men. "Grab him." Cashin moved. It was a blur of motion. One moment, he was sitting on the sofa. The next, he was standing between me and the thugs. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like the executioner. "Take one more step," Cashin said, his voice calm and terrifyingly devoid of emotion, "and they will never find your bodies." The thugs hesitated. They knew who Cashin Vane was. They knew the rumors. "He's just one man," Elias shrieked. "Get him." The first man lunged. Cashin sidestepped with fluid grace, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it with a sickening crunch. He kicked the man in the knee, sending him sprawling. The second man pulled a knife. "Cashin!" I screamed. Cashin didn't flinch. He caught the knife hand, driving his elbow into the attacker's throat. The man collapsed, gasping for air. It took less than 10 seconds. Cashin straightened his suit jacket, not a hair out of place. He turned his gaze to Elias. Elias was backing away, terror etched on his face. "Cashin, wait, we were friends. I just wanted him back, because I love him." Cashin walked toward him, slow and predatory. "You don't love him. You love that he was docile. You love that he didn't remember what a leech you are. You tried to kill him to save your own skin." Cashin stopped inches from Elias. He towered over him. "If you ever come near him again," Cashin whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "I will not be merciful. I will strip you of everything. Your money, your reputation, your freedom. I will bury you under so much debt that your grandchildren will be born in chains. Do you understand?" Elias nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. "Get out," Cashin commanded. Elias scrambled into the elevator, dragging his groaning hired muscle with him. The doors closed, sealing the toxicity out of our lives forever. Cashin stood there for a long moment, facing the elevator. I saw his shoulders slump slightly. The adrenaline was fading. I walked over to him. I wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, pressing my cheek against the broad expanse of his back. I could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. "You're shaking," I murmured. Cashin turned in my arms, burying his face in my neck. He held me like he was trying to merge our bodies into one. "I thought when he walked in, I thought you might go with him. I thought you might remember the good times and forget the bad." I pulled back to look at him. I ran my fingers through his dark hair, soothing the tension. "I remember everything now, Cashin," I said softly. "I remember the library. I remember the popcorn. I remember that I fell in love with a boy who thought he was a monster, but who was actually the only knight in my story." Cashin closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. "I wasted so much time. We have time now, I promised. We have all the time in the world." The storm outside had passed. The city lights below twinkled like diamonds scattered on black velvet. In the reflection of the glass, I saw us. Two broken people who had found their jagged edges fit perfectly together. The debt was paid. The contract was void. But the bond between us? That was binding. "Julian," Cashin said, lifting my hand to his lips. He kissed my knuckles, his eyes burning with a devotion that would scorch the earth if he let it. "Welcome home." And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. Not with chains, but with the terrifying vulnerability of an open heart. If you enjoyed seeing Elias get exactly what he deserved and Cashin finally taking what was his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a friend who gave you a way to save your life? Or is the betrayal too deep? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.